Jeff, thank you so much for joining in this conversation today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. It's a Friday, and I'm looking forward to the weekend, so I can't complain.
Yeah, no, me too.
Awesome. Well, and to those tuning in to listen to this conversation, thank you for joining. Excited to talk a bit more about Daxko, a new partner to Funraise, and also just the community in which you all serve, Jeff. But before we jump into that, I always love a good founder or executive story of what inspired you to be in the seat that you're in today. And so, just with your background in fitness and clubs, I'd love to if you could just share a little bit about your how you got involved with Daxco, and then we'll jump into learn a bit more about the company.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I'm going to date myself here. I actually got into the health and wellness industry back in 1995. And I think it really started with wanting to do something meaningful with my life and had been working overseas in a trading business and initially started in operations. So started buying, building, expanding a group of clubs. So I spent the initial part of my career deep in operations. Over time, that led to technology. So about 17, 18 years ago, led me into the technology world and again, technology around servicing health and wellness facilities, operationally, effectiveness, things like that. And so, yeah, I've really spent the majority of my career, in this field. And that led me eventually to this role that I sit in now. So I started about 6 months ago as the CEO of Daxco. And it's been great. I would say, Justin, it really kind of brings together my past experiences, both in operations and technology, and gives me an opportunity to serve what I say is an amazing community of people that work on the front lines and coming alongside of them to really like impact their mission in what they're doing every day.
Very cool. Very cool. And within Daxco, you service lots of different verticals. And so tell us a little bit about who your audience is, the types of organizations that you support through the technology.
Yeah, we service a lot of different operators and organizations. I think the kind of one of the main types of groups we serve is nonprofits, as you know really well, and that could be anywhere from mission-driven organizations like YMCA's, JCC's, Boys and Girls Clubs, community centers, that are really focused on impacting their communities.
And in terms of sort of the sharp problem or the value prop that Daxco brings to your audience, how would you describe that? And what problems are you solving with Daxco?
Yeah, we come alongside our partners in a number of ways. So one, operationally, right? There are things that are happening in a facility every day that years ago, and I remember this, were binders and paper and very manual. And technology has come a really long way, and we're excited to be able to provide things that technology wise and services that streamline operations. So no longer requiring people to do those things and allowing them to, I say, like get out and impact and touch people directly. And then also just to drive engagement with members, whether it be making it easier to become a member, making it easier to register for programs. So it's operationally, it's driving participation and activity. And then I think more recently we're all seeing the power of data, and how do we use that to really engage people. So we really become a deep partner with the people that we work with.
Have you seen there be, when you take a step back and you think about like just industries over the course of the last 2 decades, call it,
Yeah.
that have seen a ton of transformation because of the internet, because of technology, and just really the digitization of so many different things. Have you seen this come true for your audience, and like just being in one of those sort of like transformational periods? And when you think about where you're at today and where you're going to be in the next decade, what opportunities do you see in front of you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the interesting things is, and we kind of lived through this with, during COVID is, so brick and mortar facilities are still kind of the core of what we do, right? And I think during COVID, we all saw like, hey, is this going to move to a more virtual experience? And that is definitely an offering that's out there, and it's a part of, impacting communities, through, kind of programming and different offerings. But there's definitely, I think, you kind of take how it's all started, right? It's like people face to face interactions in facilities. So, from a technology standpoint, for us, it's how do we more effectively one operate as we talked about, but engage people. People have a lot of options in the world today, and how do we come alongside of the groups we work with and really help them engage? And that part is moving at light speed. I mean, all we need to do is look at this in my hand, a phone, right? And how do we as a technology organization make sure that we're engaging with people to get their attention, not get their attention too much? So is it personalized, right? So it's really finding ways to bring people into facilities, make it easy for them, to come and participate, doing it in a medium or a mode that they want to do it in, and do it in an as automated way as possible.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I was thinking about getting to know Daxco over the last, I call it a year, but more, I think specifically in the last like 3 to 4 months. The sort of like the strength that I've seen sort of in Daxco and meeting some of your customers at some of the events I've been at is sort of just operationally. Daxco has created this platform that's really helped streamline the way organizations work, their workflows, the way that they engage,
Yeah.
their communities and so forth. And so I think it was probably about a year ago or so when someone on your partnership team reached out to Funraise and said, "Hey, I'd be interested in talking about a partnership." And originally when I started Funraise 9 years ago, where I had a lot of conviction where our product needed to go was more on like the front end, like the fundraising and the giving, because you had started to see some transformation operationally that organizations were making, but still, it felt like the fact that it was easier, to buy toilet paper on Amazon than to make a donation to your favorite charity was a problem, and for many organizations is still a problem. And so when Daxco had reached out and we started talking about what a partnership could look like, it became apparent that like leveraging Funraise's giving platform on top of Daxco's operations platform, there could be like a really great marriage, if you will, between the two companies. And so from your perspective, would love to hear how you think about the partnership and some of the strengths of it that you've seen maybe. And again, we're still in the infancy, of course, but would love to hear just your perspective on how you think about the partnership.
Yeah, Justin, it's I would just take a kind of a step back, and for us, our responsibility to the people we work with is to look at kind of the outcomes they need, and to make that as seamless as possible, to achieve their goals, their mission, their impact, all of those things. And as you know, we have a lot of things that we build out in our platform, and as we've looked at how do we, if it starts with how do we serve people, right, the best. There's certain things that we're going to do, and then I think over the last years we've really looked and said there are certain things. And this is a great example of donor management and what you guys are doing. That this is not our core competency. And so if we're going to do right by the people we work with, we need to find the right partners. One that do it well, and you guys do it amazingly. They go deep into that part of what you do, but then also not just find those groups, because that could be just like a referral or reference, but really embed it deeply into our partnership ecosystem, which again goes beyond just kind of talking about it. It's really making that experience feel seamless for our customers and kind of for their members and the people, their constituents. So as you know, we've spent a lot of work with integrations and how do we make that feel like almost like we're one product and experience together versus two disparate organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's like when you have, if I could use these words, like two purpose built products, right? So like Daxco was built with a specific end audience in mind, right? It wasn't broad. It wasn't like every brick and mortar company in the United States. It was obviously a very narrow focus. Funraise also has a very like sort of narrow focus. We only work with like nonprofits, and even within nonprofits, only a certain subset of organizations. And then when you put like these two platforms together in a really nice integrated way, it does create a lot more leverage than maybe like a non-purpose built or a larger platform that maybe could do some of these things, but it's not specific to the industry. And so I'd love your perspective on how you think about vertical software today, and where you see that going even as you continue to build Daxco.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I think in my experience in technology, it is very clear to me that there are nuances to different verticals and segments. And so you just look at health and wellness and fitness in general. There are a ton of verticals, and the nuance between a nonprofit, a YMCA, JCCs, relative to something else, just in that kind of larger category, it is very different. You could also even say, oh, but a general membership platform should be able to work across a lot of verticals. That is not the case. I would say the last 5 to 10% of the software you build that's nuanced for your audience is what differentiates you, and it really is like what shows that you really understand the group you're servicing. So for Daxko, that product is 100% focused for nonprofits. So everything we do in that platform is focused to be built for nonprofit organizations, and you really see that come out in understanding, how does a nonprofit handle memberships or program registration or donor management, and we need to solve all that, whether it be within our application or finding the right partners like yourself, who also are very nuanced and focused around the specific audience that we're trying to serve.
Absolutely. How do you see or maybe quantify or help your buyers? So I would assume, executives at Wise, for example, how do you help them understand the value they're getting with technology, or help them understand the value technology could be making, for their why? You talked earlier a little bit about helping transform organizations and how technology plays a role. How have you seen that play out in, the 6 months of leading Daxco?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways, and some are easier to quantify, when you go through it. So, when you look at operationally, you could obviously look at manpower and work, that people had to do. Where do you eliminate, some of those costs, and we always say, where can you reinvest that money, right, into something that's more, member facing, community facing, impact facing, versus just doing tasks, right? So I think some of that is very measurable, and there's no doubt we do that well. And then the other part of it is just how can, through technology, we increase the impact, whether that be more participation, ease of participation. So we do case studies, when we're building tools on making it easier to sign up for programs, whether it be through the online portal, whether it be through a mobile application, do you see that trending up? Or in retention, we have an engagement tool that, we can kind of see trends where if you engage with people in the right ways and understand those people, you know, do people stay longer? Do they, not attrit, at a rate that you used to in the past? So, yeah, we're looking at all of that. And I think in the end, Justin, I think just like you and kind of your desire is, in the end, um, we are not the product. The product are the people on the front lines doing the work. And we're inspired to say, hey, what can we do to help you have a bigger impact, use your money more effectively, and, bring more people, in to be impacted by the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you get a lot of, and I remember when actually at I think it was the CEO summit a couple months ago, you talked about this focus on data. And I could imagine, since you guys work with so many Ys, I could imagine a Y might come to Daxco and say, hey, we just want to know how are we benchmarked compared to our peers? And so I would imagine you guys have a lot of this data to help organizations understand that. Do you bring any of that sort of analysis to the table for a while so they can understand and benchmark themselves compared maybe to a peer of similar size or similar location?
Yeah, great question. We have a lot of data, and I think it's always a question of how do you use that data, and what's important. What do people want to see? And then I would say, like, once you see that data, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to action it? So there's a number of things. I think it's one of the most exciting things we're working on is we've spent a lot of time and energy and money, organizing the data and data warehousing, and, getting it in a place that we can understand it and read it, and we can action on it. We've also started to work really heavily with YUSA, and then we have a customer advisory board in the Y world, to kind of answer the question you just said, like, what data is important and what do you want to do with it? And so we can do some of the benchmarking. We can also hopefully go beyond benchmarking, which is, okay, so for Ys in that world, right, that have this issue, but they do these things, they see this kind of result. So we would recommend, again, based on what we're seeing in the market and the data, these kinds of, these kinds of initiatives will help solve this kind of problem.
Very fascinating. Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see how that develops. Super interesting application to different types of organizations. Kind of piggybacking off of that, what are some of the key trends that you're seeing in the nonprofit sector right now that you're either excited about or on the other side concerned about from your perspective?
Yeah, there's a number of things we're really excited about. I think, one of the trends that we're seeing is personalization. We live in a world that we are being bombarded with information, marketing, you know, um, and I think it's really important right now that we speak to people at the right time, in the right way, in a way that feels personal and it's meaningful to them, right? And I think this is your world exactly. I'm going to flip this question on you in a second, but in our world, it's understanding how to engage a member to maybe do a certain activity, how to engage them to continue to be a member, to continue to be someone who participates, in at a Y or a J or a Boys and Girls Club, and then I think just making sure that there's this right level of engagement again in a way that they want to be engaged with, and we've built out tools. We're learning that. We're getting better at it, and I think it's going to be a really fun thing going forward. So I would love to flip that one back on you and ask you how that applies in your world.
So there's a few different things, a few different trends that we're observing, and potentially some concerns as well that I'm seeing. So I'll start with some of the more positive things. One, to your point on sort of the personalization, I think that we're seeing this being more important today because of the application of AI,
Yeah.
and where the average person still can pretty much tell the difference between something that was
Yeah.
generated versus created by a real like human being. And so I think that like these things or these things put pressure on each other, and so what donors, especially major donors, don't want is to feel like they're some sort of like automation in the system that's going to trigger the ask or the appeal or whatever, and have no connection. So definitely, agree sort of with your analysis on that. What's also interesting though on the other end of how organizations are trying to think about personalization at scale,
Mm.
right? Because at the same time, organizations who are trying to scale and trying to grow have big missions that require a lot of funding. There is a challenge with the scalability of personalization, right? And so it's how do we find a path forward that allows us to achieve the scale we want, and not require X amount of OpEx increase as a result. So we're seeing nonprofits ask that question and are leaning to technology to help solve for that, right? And in various different ways. The other trend that we're seeing within the nonprofit sector is sort of a return to actionable data.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is I think that there was this period of time when people are like, oh, we have the dashboards and we have the information, so check that box. But it's not actionable, or we don't understand what it actually means or what it's telling us. And this is actually where and part of that is because it's a skill set, right? I mean, not everyone's a data analysis. Not everyone is trained to take the outputs of what data is telling us and to be able to read what it actually means or how it should inform strategy. And so this is actually, I think this is an interesting thing that we're seeing come to fruition. And this is actually where I do think AI has one of the strongest components in our industry, is helping individuals analyze, assess, or even create dashboards with like common language, and understanding anomalies in data sets and so forth. So this is an area that I'm really excited about, an area we're actually focused on sort of doubling down in some of our product lines, is helping our customers take the data that's in their platform, because it's a ton, and then to be able to turn that into something that's like actionable. Like, if you don't call this donor tomorrow, they're probably going to churn. Or if you don't send out these emails over the next period of time, there could be some challenges here. So I think turning actionable data, or turning data into action items for organizations, is a trend that's going to become more and more of a demand from our shared customers, and from the nonprofit community.
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. I think it has always been a question of I have this information, what do I do with it, right? And it gets complex, and we have data scientists on our team, and we've been, building out engaged products, for a number of years, and now being able to layer AI on top of that, it's just going to accelerate our ability to understand what to do with that data and how to action it for the benefit of the people that we work with. So, the AI, it obviously is a very hot topic. And I'm sure, like you, we're learning and developing how to use it effectively. And we use it both internally and how we operate. And then how do we surface that, whether it be in our products or in learnings within our products. You mentioned reporting. We're working on tools where instead of having to go into a reporting and type the fields and the filters you want, like we want it to be able to say, I could speak to the product and say, hey, I really want to understand this, you
Yeah.
know, this is the information I'm trying to get. And great. We have all the information, and then putting AI tools on that can then surface that in a way that, our constituents want to see it. So a lot
Exactly.
of really, I think, fun, exciting things ahead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's how to make the hard things or the hard things to achieve easier for organizations, for customers. I think is a fun, big problem to solve. On the last thing I'll say on trends, and then we can move on, is I think the area where I have concern, and it's actually been a concern. It was a concern when I was a nonprofit practitioner. I spent 10 years in the nonprofit space, started a couple nonprofits, leading those organizations and building them. And it's still my concern working with thousands of nonprofits, and it's just this whole conversation around how much an organization invest in its operating costs, in its overhead, is how nonprofits refer to it. And the reason why this concerns me is because I think there's been so much good information that's come out about why organizations should invest more in their infrastructure, more in their people, because the output of that will actually scale the impact and the ultimate, mission of the organization. There's been a lot of great content that's come out, but it actually hasn't moved. The needle's not moved. Like there's still this very archaic, belief across the donor base that 90 to 95 cents of every dollar I spend should go to the programs. And, as a business, as an entrepreneur yourself, an owner, that like the less you spend in overhead, especially when you're trying to scale, when you're in a scale mode, right? There's definitely a time when you can generate a bunch of cash, and that for nonprofit's sake, it can go back into the mission. But when an organization is building and scaling, I believe it needs to think about itself like a startup, early stage startup that needs to invest in the infrastructure, it needs to invest in the future so that it has the ability to achieve impact that you wouldn't even think is possible, looking at an annual budget. So that's an area and I haven't seen the conversation change around that more than I would like. And so that always, is in the back of my head as organizations think about, especially going into new fiscal years, how we're going to invest in our budget, how we're going to invest in our organization. It's usually the last thing thought about outside of programs.
Yeah, Justin, at our CEO summit, you probably heard me talking about it. So serial entrepreneur from years ago, and someone who's always pushed to do more with less, right? And that's what's exciting about technology, right? If we do it the right way, there's a bigger impact for less money. And again, back to both operational efficiencies and just using tools that drive momentum, drive activity. It's exciting. It's what gets me excited every day because you see it, and I see it. There's so much impact being made by the people we serve, and it's like, how could we just help that be a little bit more
Yeah.
and a little bit more effective, a little more efficient? How do we come alongside of people that are just pouring their lives into other people and communities? And that's super motivating.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. I mean, the thing that I always think about is how can we help our customers accelerate their impact? If someone has like a 5-year or 10-year plan, how can we get that done in 2 or 3 years? How can what we're building actually play a role in that? I think that when you take a step back and you think about technology from the perspective and the end market that both you and I get to serve, it's so inspiring to think about what we can build, what's possible, and how we can help our customers, really achieve the value that they're trying to create, which for us is making the world a much, much better place for everyone. Okay, so maybe we'll wrap it up with this final question here, Jeff. And again, appreciate just your time spending with us on during this conversation. But just as Daxko is a company that's been evolving and is definitely growing its partner network. It's becoming an ecosystem for its customers to kind of find the best in breed of things that maybe Daxko's not building today. How do you approach new partnerships, and maybe even speak to, like, are there current gaps that you're looking to try to fill in a partner as you think about your partnership ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I said before is ultimately we have a responsibility to serve our customers and make sure that we're meeting their needs and do it in as seamless a way as possible. So, on one part of that is us investing heavily in the technologies we own and developing those. But I think it's pretty clear given the size and scope and the number of things that we're trying to solve, we definitely need to do some of that through partners. And you guys are a great example of doing that in the fundraising side and donor management. And I think that the important part there is we've made a shift over the last number of years. I think of being very clear that we're a more open ecosystem. Now we need to do that in a really safe and responsible way because obviously we need to make sure that our customers' data is safe and secure and moving back and forth. That's all done really well, and then we need to make sure that it's a seamless experience for our customers and their members. But yeah, we are 100% continuing to build out our partnership ecosystem, and I would say going beyond just building out our ecosystem, going much deeper with the partners that are kind of like very strategic in areas that are important to our customers. So whether that be in fundraising, whether it be in childcare, whether that be in camp management, things like that. It's definitely a focus of ours. And again, it just comes back to this core principle of what is needed by our customers to improve their operations, increase their impact. Whether we do that through what we build or through doing a better job with our partnerships and making those deeper and more seamless. That's what we're going to do going forward.
Awesome. It's actually very similar to sort of our strategy as well in the space, and which is why we are really excited to partner with Daxko. What we've before partnering, we've worked with Wise in the past, but we knew that we were a point solution for our Y customers because we were more just the donor management and the fundraising. So it was usually like the fundraising teams at the Wise using Funraise. And so we had the opportunity to work with, best in breed software like Daxko to partner on sort of the back end side. It was very strategic and work. It was a very nice, partnership. And so it's exactly, the approach we've taken with opening up our APIs is what are things that we're not going to build, at least in the near future, in the next couple of years, because integrating with another purpose sort of built software for our space does really well. And so we're excited about some new integrations coming to market as well on the email marketing and wealth information side of the house. It's something that we're very excited about. But the approach of just kind of building an ecosystem in a thoughtful way. I think if there's one company that's done that extremely well, it's like Shopify, right? It's like one of probably the best examples of creating a marketplace or ecosystem that creates value for the customer is like the first and foremost is the question you have to ask. And so I really appreciate just your thoughtfulness around how you care for the customer, how partners can help you, care for your customers. And while it's only been about 6 months into the partnership, it's been a great experience from the Funraise perspective. So thanks for allowing us to serve some of your customers in the fundraising space. We appreciate it and look forward to many more years to come partnering with Daxko.
Yeah, same, Justin. We really appreciate the partnership and thanks for everything you're doing. I think it's important to note that the more money our nonprofit groups have, the more impact they can have. So thanks for all the work and the passion you have around what you're doing. It's a privilege to be your partner.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. Appreciate the time again and look forward to many more years of partnership. Thank you.
Thank you.